Disney and Jio have just done a tie-up as well. Um, and I'm very surprised to see that the Competition Commission has not stepped in yet and sort of said that this is almost monopolistic practice because you're two massive companies coming together, or for that matter, PVR and Inox, which impacts the distribution and exhibition of cinemas immensely. They have, I think, about three odd thousand screens out of 10,000 in India. That's a massive amount of the market that just one entity controls. So it's difficult, I think, still to get a sense, just as a viewer, as somebody who likes cinema, of where this is going to go.
But back to your single screen point, I think at least in the metros, the single screen theaters have been overwhelmed by three separate trends. One, the real estate that they're sitting on has just appreciated so wildly that
Yeah.
it does not make sense. It's much easier for them to, cave and take that big paycheck, or like some people in Bangalore have done, put up an office building there or a tech park and share revenues in perpetuity, way more than any theater could ever pay off. That's one. Succession is an issue. The next generation is just not interested in
Yes.
operating a theater business. And third, they don't have any negotiating power at all. So it you can see why single screen theaters are succumbing. It's surprising that the holdouts have held out for as long as they have, at least in the metros.
Welcome back to What Was That, where we discuss tech and business news and how it impacts the culture. And as Nitesh was quoting right now, let's just dump all our research here and see how it goes. That is what we do. Nitesh, how is it going?
It's the venture capital approach, Vineet. Spray and pray.
Pray and pray. So we are discussing this is a new area for us. We're discussing the music industry and a new deal.
My story is not so much a story as it is an observation. In the span of a few months, a lot of consolidation and M&A has happened, specifically with, let's just call it Bollywood, because the industry seems to have embraced the term Bollywood, the Hindi film industry, and production houses are getting bought out. Incidentally, getting bought out by music labels, which one maybe somebody saw some synergy there, but two deals back to back in the span of what, a month, that's a pattern, maybe a trend. So I thought we should take a closer look at that. For the record, I'm talking about Saregama, which is, oh wait, before I start, uh, there are multiple listed companies that we're going to talk about today. I am invested in some of them, and that's your disclosure. For there, none of this is investment advice. We're just looking at the landscape of an industry, a couple of adjacent industries actually, and what's going on there. And that's it. You know, we are invested as investors and as consumers of this content. So, full disclosure. I just want to put that out there. With that on the record, Saregama invested in Sanjay Leela Bhansali's production house, and that was what, a month ago, roughly. And last week or the week before that, Universal Music Group invested in Excel Entertainment, which is Farhan Akhtar and Ritesh Sidwani's production house. And both in both the deals, they've invested a minority stake. Saregama, being listed, has come out and said that we have the option of taking it to a majority stake around 2030, but for now it is a minority stake, and Mr. Vansali is firmly in charge. Universal Music Group has invested 30%. Matlab, they bought a 30% stake in Excel, so they're going to remain strategic minority investors. Both of them has said the rationale for this is we want dibs on the music album of whatever movies these guys put out. Because, and these are two like unrelated players, right? And they both said the same thing, because at the moment, basically, we're being forced to participate in bidding wars for the music content, and that's our bread and butter. And so we want to make these our captive um, land banks, if you want to use a real estate metaphor. That whatever comes out of here, we want first dibs on that. Not just first dibs, like we want it to flow right into our machinery, so that we can package it and earn revenues on it, royalties on it. in perpetuity. So just for that, just for the right to control the music content, they've invested in the entire studios, which is interesting, because for the longest time, music rights was one of the revenue streams. At one time, one of the smallest revenue streams that came from film production, and now it's big enough that music labels can actually do big investments in film studios just for the right to have the album as part of their roster, as part of their catalog. That's really cool. That's it. That's the summary of what we're going to talk about today. What just happened, and let's try and give it some context. How we got here, and where do we go from here? What's it?
This is very interesting because couple of thoughts. One is it would seem then that music revenues are rising in the streaming era, which is counter to the popular wisdom that we hear from the artist side that streaming revenues are tiny. Streaming revenues are like people are saying, "Oh, I've got millions of streams, and here, like I get $1,000." Versus artists in the 80s, at least on the uh, Western music side, the rich artists were super rich. Again, we still have our Taylor Swifts, of course, but yeah, it
We are going
seemed
to talk about Taylor Swift later in the episode and why she's a genius. We'll get to that.
yeah. So I think that was my initial thought, and but let's get into it.
Compared to the 80s and the 90s, that shift from records to cassettes to CDs, at the time, artists got a cut of the entire album. In the West, I'm talking about, got a cut of the entire album, and it was really lucrative. Like if you had a breakout album that was on the top 50 charts for so many consecutive weeks, apart from the radio, there was no other way for people to listen. Right? They had to buy the album, and people bought, and artists got a straight cut of that. So even today, music revenues are not even close, adjusted for inflation, to what they were back then. So the complaint of artists is valid. I think what the two stories that have intersected in your statement are that in the West, streaming has saturated the market. Everybody who is a potential streaming customer is already a streaming customer on one or multiple apps. So they've hit saturation there. That's in fact the consensus on why Universal made a move here in India with Excel, because they've hit some saturation point in their home market. Here in India, in such a short span, just like we skipped the entire desktop phase and we went straight to mobile internet, we have skipped this entire phase of we had cassettes and we had records before that, but it was a tiny industry and completely unorganized and fragmented. you know so in this short span, post COVID, you've had an explosion of streaming revenues suddenly flowing to labels. Like, just again, I'm disclosing again, I am an investor. Just look at the stock chart of Tips Music from 2019 to now. It went up some 100x in 5 years, because it was like they were sitting on this mine and suddenly they realized that there's a lot more ore there than anybody realized, and so the market rapidly re-rated. Not an investing suggestion in any way, all right? I'm just saying, go back and look at the chart. uh, it was crazy. So post COVID, you had people sitting at home, people streaming. um, Suddenly YouTube was able to charge respectable ad rates in India as well. And some of that flowed back to the owners of the content creators. And, if you have a back catalog and people are bored and sitting at home, they're going to stream a lot of your old stuff. And they kept it relevant, these labels, by having remixes and refreshes and using old music in new movies, whatever. All right. It was, yes, it was a clown car that fell into a into a gold mine, but they also executed pretty well. By they, I mean Tips. Saregama, I think we've discussed previously, which is other listed company. They did really well with Carvan, but then they kind of lost their way. And, they started producing films with their own banner, which is called Yodli, and they haven't had any significant hit. So, in fact, when were justifying the rationale when they gave the rationale for buying Sanjay Leela Bhansali Productions, they outright said it. We haven't been very successful making our own films. Although the logic there was, we'll own the music, which is the main thing for us, but they weren't very good at it. Still, anyways, so imagine in the last 5 years, these companies have gone from, or let's say Tips has gone from a 50 crore market cap to a 5,000 crore market cap, and along the way, they've matured really quickly, moving along with the consumer, striking deals with Meta, with TikTok. So every time a reel uses any of these songs in the background, they get a small check from Meta and from TikTok, which wasn't the case earlier. And fascinating stuff. We'll get to that as well. There are just so many rabbit holes we can go down with this. And it's a company I've been tracking for years. So, yeah, I do have a lot of disorganized, unconnected facts, but they're all here, I promise. Anyways, about 50% of the revenues that they were getting, ballpark, was coming from paid apps, your Apple Musics, and the paid half of Spotify. In the last year or so, two apps, Wink and Ghana, I think. One of them shut down, and the other has moved to a completely paid revenue. So they're no longer ad supported. So suddenly, that half of the market has cratered because apart from YouTube, now there are no ad supported streaming labels. Spotify with ads, I'm not a Spotify user, so I can't attest to this. But from whatever I have experienced at house parties, is unusable without premium. Just the sheer number of ads that you get, even if it's just running in the background, it's garbage. You have to pay, to have a halfway decent listening experience.
Fair, but if people are paying, so okay, so either of two things is happening, right? If the Spotify free experience is terrible, then
Mhm.
either people are just logging off Spotify, therefore the users, very few users, because India is not typically a SaaS paying market, uh, or people are subscribing, so therefore the revenue share should be more because these are now paying customers.
We're kind of in the middle where people have been thrown off one platform but haven't yet gotten off the other. I think most people, I don't even think this is exclusively an Indian thing, but most people just default to YouTube.
Fair. YouTube Music, actually I use both on the premium side,
Which
Spotify
is the other?
and
Spotify. Okay.
Spotify and YouTube.
Right.
I don't know how the ad experience is now on YouTube free, but it quite terrible from what I have seen in general.
I have an anecdote. In house parties, you just put some song on the TV and, it's just playing in the background. But then you get ads in between because most people don't pay for premium. And because it's your friend's ID, you get to see the ads that they've been targeted for. And it can get really embarrassing.
Ouch.
That's all I'll say. I have judged multiple people for the ads that the algorithm is serving.
That is one problem I had never even thought of. Oh God.
One more reason to pay for premium. You don't want your
Uh,
algorithm exposed.
I think YouTube Premium is one I'm like, obviously, I have no vested interest in saying anything nice about Google, but YouTube Premium is actually worth it. Though,
Said
of
the
course, it is. I saw this podcast, I think I mentioned on our group, like, make the free experience so terrible. Like, Zoran Mamdani was talking on Trevor Noah's podcast.
Mhm.
Make the free experience so terrible that you're in effect forcing people to upgrade. So, it's not an upgrade for a nice to have, it is just monetizing dysfunction in the regular service. So he was talking more in the context of public services, but yeah, I would say, I don't know, here it's legit in a way also, right? You see ads or you pay, but yeah, terrible experience on the free side.
let's rewind a little on how we got here. Because we were looking into production houses, which is a part of the business I've honestly never really done a deep dive into because that wasn't the starting point for me. It was the music being created that was the starting point, or the old music, which wait, I have to put this out there. In the US, there are private equity funds which invest just in catalogs. Okay. Mm, that did not come as a surprise. KKR has sold mortgage-backed securities or asset-backed securities, securitizing the cash flows from these royalties to insurance company.
The CD in CDS. No, CDO. CDO. I keep getting confused. CDO,
No,
right?
these are classic ABS, and ABS could be on anything. It could be on credit card debt. It could be on vehicle loans, whatever. Anything that pays out a fixed periodic sum is securitizable. Oh God, yeah. Anyway, is securitizable. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Uh, Up to like from the time of Alamara to the 1990s, early 2001, where there was an actual fixed inflection point, film financing in India was wherever you can pull the money from. It's a glamorous industry. Maybe you con somebody, maybe you honey trap somebody, maybe you get bullied by somebody. There's a rich history of the underworld and the Hindi film industry, right? It was a revolving door. So why did that happen? Why did the underworld ever get their foot in the door here? Like what was the reason for that? Why was it so conducive for them? It was because the Indian government did not recognize film production as an industry. And because they didn't do that, because it wasn't a recognized industry, they could not raise formal credit from banks, etc. So these guys, the producers, had no choice. It was either put up all your money for each project, and then you're just one failed film away from bankruptcy.
And this is an industry which with a huge upfront cost, and it's sort of like very high risk also. High risk,
And
high reward. Crazy
80s,
high risk, crazy high reward.
90s, your timelines could stretch. There were no bound scripts. There was no commitment from actors. Like if you look at the filmography of a Govinda, they were doing 10 films a year. So as a producer of one of those films, I don't know how these guys slept at night, really living with that much uncertainty of will the star show up? Will the production ever finish? Will it be on schedule? Will it be slightly over budget or completely over budget? And then finally, right at the very end, maybe 5 years after you embarked on this project, will audiences actually like the film? Will I actually make money? That is a difficult way to live. But anyways, 2001, I got varying dates. I don't know.
Just one point on that. That truly a difficult way to live, right? What will happen, whatever. Let me bring in the underworld.
They didn't have a choice. They didn't have a choice. See, whether the very first move was made by a desperate producer to one of these guys or the other way around, because it's the perfect relationship, right? The underworld had lots of money to launder, and this is a great place to put it. And nobody else is going to fund these guys, because it's not like you're funding a builder and at least you have a land and a building that you can do a kabza on if nothing else works and everything goes to hell. Here you have some prints in a box, and who even knows if the product is complete? Who even knows what the market value is going to be? The mafia is the perfect person or the perfect entity to make sure that they don't lose money, and if they do, then they can recoup it on the next project or whatever. You had like legit respected producers who uh, fell in the net of investigative agencies who were tapping the phones of these guys because they are underworld dons. And suddenly you had, oh yeah, this one film producer who has multiple apartments and lives a cushy life in Mumbai is actually pretty meshed in with the underworld, and so let's tell him that has happened. So that's where it started, and these guys realized just how much money there is in this game, and I'm speculating, but relatively how much cleaner this business is. And so they said, let's do this full time. So the tail kind of started to wag the dog, and these guys took over. They had their cronies who became producers, and were basically the muscle on set, and lots of casting couch stories, all of that. I don't want to turn this into a masala podcast, which you can cut into a short with me speaking into a microphone and saying scandalous things that you can put on.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. 10 million views, 5 million views, 8 million views, whatever it is. Go for
No,
it.
thank you. But anyways, what ended up happening was these guys understood the cash flows at every stage, and they realized that the talent is getting paid a lot, and therefore the extortion started there. They said, yes, we produced this film and I just paid you for it, but you need to pay me production money. And so the money comes back. Sometimes a film does really well, you don't accurately report your box office numbers and just threaten the theater guys to pay you under the table. The other way often happened where you had a film that was failing but money laundering, whatever, depending on the specific needs and circumstances of that movie and the environment around it. Kahana Pyare came out in 99, 99, 2000, 99, I think, late 99. Rakesh Roshan was asked for the music rights of Kahana Pyare, and he refused to give them away. And that's what led to the attempt on his life. Yeah, two bullets, which, okay. Scary stuff. Gulshan Kumar famously was gunned down. So this was the environment, and I don't know, by some stroke of luck, the industry found its way to the ministry and said, "Look, this is the problem. We need formal credit." And the ministry responded, and it was formalized. No, you are an industry. You can raise up to 50% of your financing in debt from banks. You're an industry, so we'll give you industrial support as well. All sorts of incentives, because by then, even like the ecosystem had just started to mature. Tourism departments of various countries and states realized just how much revenue the right movie at the right time could bring you. I mean, there are people who still go to Switzerland because of
Of
DDL,
course. Yeah,
right?
yeah. Huge
That's
numbers.
You can't put a price tag on that. It's forever, because people are going to be watching these movies even 1, 2, 3 generations from now, and who knows, somebody might say, I want to do Switzerland, just like Raj and Simran did. I don't know. But so around 2001, formal money started coming into the industry. By 2008, just like with everything else, the narrative that was built was that Bollywood is finally open for business. A lot of institutional money came in, or rather the big labels from the West, Foxes of the world, they came in, put in money, burnt their fingers here, and beat a hasty retreat. So it's around that time of, that's when the rocket sings were made, because suddenly profitability wasn't so much of a concern because it's somebody else's money.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily fear for your.
Yeah, that's the reason you had so many indie films and offbeat, small budget, long short films being made in that span. I'm guessing that's the reason for it, because suddenly profitability didn't matter all that much. The numbers, the absolute numbers didn't matter. So like you could have a Dhoom and then ride off of that, coast off of that, and produce your Rocket Sings, and Yash has made a lot of interesting films around them, weirdly. So yeah, that was when the corporates came and the corporates left. Luck by Chance was filmed after the corporates left, but there is a scene in that of Rishi Kapoor who is just, I know his filmography, but that has to be one of his best performances. I love that movie so much. There's a scene where, do you remember? There's a scene where there's a meeting with an actual like a corporate studio head or corporate financiers or whatever, where Rishi Kapoor turns up, and the financiers. Any vague recollection of this scene?
Vague recollections, honestly. I was a few beers down when I saw this movie. I should see it again sober. So vague
Two
recollections.
separate recommendations.
Mm.
One, of course, watch the movie. Second, watch the opening credits. The opening credits of Luck by Chance are tea being made on set, right? Just chat. Tea being made on set, and it finds its way to everybody, from the spot boys to the talent. And depending on your place in the hierarchy, the container changes. But it's just tea. It's the same tea being served everywhere, which only Zoya Akhtar could have done that. But anyways, enough fanboying. There's a scene in that where the corporate guys, they tell Rishi Kapoor that we don't bankroll based on talent and all that. We bankroll based on the property. Rishi Kapoor is puzzled. Property? What property? Am I supposed to put up collateral or something? They say no. In Hollywood, the script is called the property. So we invest based on the property. And Rishi Kapoor's comeback to that is in India, property को ही property कहते
एंड एक्टर को प्रॉपर्टी कहते होंगे.
हैं. That came later with Instagram. But anyway, everyone was still making money and things were fine until streaming apps came and COVID happened. And apart from, again, I'm not too happy with the term, but tentpole productions, movies don't make money anymore. Correct. Broadly, that is true. There is an exception, a pretty big Indian exception, Maddock Films. Have you read any articles on Maddock? Okay, this guy Dinesh Vijan started with Illuminati Films, which was a joint venture with Saif Ali Khan. They made, I think, Finding Fanny and Being Cyrus.
Yeah, those I
Just
remember.
really offbeat films. And then they had a couple of flops, so they parted ways amicably. And Dinesh Vijan started Maddock Films, and he pioneered a new concept: low cost, high concept, and script based, no stars, and before production starts. So what film houses had started doing uh, to negate the risk of having to work with the underworld, and then corporate money came and went, whatever, what they would do is they would announce a film and get distributors to buy it in advance and use that money to actually make the film. So they were selling the concept and using those funds to make the movie, because that one report I read said the underworld was lending money to film producers before 2000 at a 60% rate of interest, 40 to 60% annual rate of interest.
Oh,
And not just that, like if I borrowed 10 crores, say, and the rate of interest is 40%, they'll only give me 6, and I need to repay 10 plus interest.
wait, what? How? What? Charles?
Yeah, yeah, from the second year. So you prepaid first year's interest. I
What
don't know.
were the economics of even hit movies to actually
I
make this
don't
make
know. I
sense?
don't know how movies ever got made with these numbers. I do not know. Like there has to be off balance sheet cash flows both in and out. Otherwise, it does not make sense.
Like even for a crazy big hit, how do these numbers make any sense when stars are charging crazy amounts?
Yeah,
Wow.
ridiculous. Uh, I'm speculating, but maybe that's why you don't give a paycheck but gift your star a Rolls Royce, because it still stays on your books and you can just claim the depreciation over the next 5-7 years, but it is ostensibly a gift. And I don't know. That
That all
always struck me.
seems like small stakes when you're talking 60% interest from the underworld. मैं कैसे depreciate करेगा? मैं कैसे इसका tax holiday मिलेगा मुझे?
Uh,
Different problems.
yeah, whatever.
Wow.
So the model that Dinesh Vijan has pioneered is it's well accepted in Hollywood. Is that before even a single frame is shot, he has pre-sold the streaming rights, pre-sold the music rights, pre-sold the broadcasting rights, which is dying but not dead yet. So अभी भी उसका you get a little bit of revenue from your Sonys and Z's of the world, right? They still pay a little bit for that.
When you say broadcasting, even on Sony and Z, you're separating it from Sony and Z OTT rights, right?
Yes, that's different. Streaming is different. Streaming rights are different. This is broadcasting rights. Your
On television, on
Tata
DTH.
Sky on
Ah,
DTH. Yeah. So that still sells, especially for family movies, apparently. That is still a solid revenue source. Diminishing, but not dead yet.
not for Suryavansham.
That's just their equivalent of the blue screen, man.
Yeah, it's like दाल चावल. It's like आज क्या कुछ दिमाग लगाने का मन नहीं कर रहा, सूर्यवंशम लगा दो.
Yeah, but seriously, it's such a lazy joke.
It
Because,
is, but it is true.
yeah, so what? It's okay. I have an intellectual objection to Suryavansham jokes.
Have you seen Suryavanshi? I have seen Suryavanshi also. Salman Khan,
Oh,
Amrita Singh,
I know.
Reincarnation,
No,
Conan the Barbarian,
exactly. Same getup.
He-Man,
Yeah,
everything.
same
Hulk
getup.
Hogan, everything in one movie, in one look. Actually, that was Conan meets Hulk meets He-Man in one Salman Khan bhai look. Yeah. Okay, intellectual joke on Suryavansham.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Sure. So Maddock Films has been wildly profitable because they basically de-risk every project before they start shooting it. And again, they've built IP the way it's done in the West. You have the what do they call it? The all these movies, Stree and Bhedia, and all these are set in the same universe, right? Which was a thing briefly in the late 2010s, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All these films are set in the same universe. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Stree 2 did phenomenal numbers. They did really, really, really well. And because 3 was such a big hit, and again, Maddock followed the same model of auctioning off the rights beforehand. So they made bank on Stree 2.
Very cool.
One nice way they found of de-risking was actors get a small payment upfront and a share of the collections. Once the producers recoup their entire costs, then they split the share. Classic Hollywood accounting. So that's made its way here. Now, in all of this, what's happening is as each revenue stream gets tighter and fewer films are making those kind of big numbers that Dhurandhar has done, for example. The financialization has found its way to music streaming because that's the most predictable part of this. You could have a dud movie and still have decent music rights. B, both the listed companies in this space, Tips and Saregama, follow different amortization models. Amortization is like depreciation, but for intangible stuff. Saregama writes off, if they've paid 10 crores for a film's music rights, they'll write it off over the next 5 years. That, whatever revenue we are able to collect, we'll collect it in the next 5 years. So they write off that expense in the next 5 years. But theoretically, revenues could keep coming in for perpetuity, right? Because they own the rights. Again, they're building an asset that could pay off. So there's some optionality there. Tips, and the reason I like them so much is that they expense the entire thing straight away. If they pay 10 crores for film's rights, that's an expansion this year. And that's going to hit our profitability. It's going to hit our profitability this year. We might have an unexpected windfall next year from the same album. Doesn't matter. That's profit in that year. We don't do amortization at all. It's just expensed off. So you have more clarity and more of these hidden optionality there. Most albums have a pretty steep decay curve. They lose relevance in weeks now, if not months. But you have that one hit somewhere that is resurrected in some ad jingle or somewhere, and suddenly you have a shit ton of money on something that you thought was nearly worthless, which is always fun to have. Like finding an old note. Oh wait, I can't use that example now. But once upon, or in another country, finding an old note in one of your coat pockets, something like that.
Yeah, so there's a few of the examples in music. So especially in the streaming era, there was this one guy somewhere in the southeast. He just made a TikTok of him just skateboarding and drinking Gatorade and chilling to Dreams by Fleetwood Mac.
Right.
And suddenly an entirely new generation was like, what is this amazing song? And suddenly an entire generation was listening to Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. And they made so much money on that song, a fresh creator economy at work.
There are multiple TikToks of parents being shocked by their kids discovering unke zamane ki music. Like, how do you know this? Uh, Baby One More Time was brought back for Kung Fu Panda by Jack Black, and my son sings it. My son sings a Britney Spears song. I did not expect that. He knows it from Kung Fu Panda 4, but he does not know that, that was the moment my adolescence began, right? And I'm going to keep that information from him for a few more years. But every time I see him humming that to himself while he's, you know, ambling about the house, it's always a nice jolt. Like, oh yeah, right, that happened.
Like I grew up on the Travis version of that song, the Travis cover, which is fantastic. I've played that so many times
Right.
at parties, and people are like, "Oh, this song sounds nice. This song sounds nice. What is this?" And when they get it, there's this whole confusion on their face.
Huh?
I am supposed to like this is before Britney was cool again, right?
Right.
Right. Hey, this does not sound like Britney. Britney was not cool. What is going on?
Ads do this a lot. They bring back some old forgotten
Mm.
tune, and then suddenly it's a part of the zeitgeist again. That's always fun to see. But anyway, yeah, that's broadly the Indian landscape. So again, we haven't, except for one brief moment, we haven't talked about the elephant in the room. T Series is private. It, it is by far the market leader in this space, big enough to get into feuds with other YouTubers about which is the largest YouTube channel in the world.
Yes.
And basically, it's like Bhushan Kumar has a money printing machine at home, and it's private, so he's not answerable to anybody. If he feels like it, he's going to outbid the other labels for the music rights to a particular album just because he feels like it, and it does not matter. Just the sheer amount of money that T Series' catalog brings in every day, every quarter, it does not matter, right? So while nobody has said it in so many words in any of the articles or interviews that I saw, I think everyone is carving up their own little kingdoms, because otherwise T Series is, if not winning the rights, then making these guys overpay and bringing the average price of albums up. And it doesn't make a difference to T Series. They're private, and like I said, they have like this long tail of songs that's going to keep paying off for eternity until something happens to YouTube's business model itself. It is safe, right? So I think they're doing this in part because they just can't compete with a privately held and controlled by one guy and not run by committee company, which has like that much cash. They just
Yeah, and
can't.
which is this making so much fresh cash out of nothing, like on a daily basis, out of residuals,
Yeah.
on a daily basis, making so much cash that is just completely separate from the rest of the business. So yeah.
So then you have your classics. There's a different channel. The regional languages have different channels. It just boggles the mind.
I cannot compute. No.
Yeah.
Brain is failing. Cannot compute.
So I think the music labels, or at least Saregama, paid so much for a minority stake in Sanjay Leela Bansali's production house, in part because they thought this is cheaper and lower risk compared to having to sit in the auction with T Series for every big new IP that comes out. It just does not make sense. T Series, the Torani brothers, have for the longest time been saying uh, that prices are just too high. This is not tenable on an album to album basis. It's not viable. It does not make sense. We would rather set it out and just quietly collect the paychecks from our back catalog than bid at these prices. It does not make sense. They've stated that over and over again. We would rather be selective and sit this out. We're not going to, just because we're sitting on a fair chunk of cash, we are not going to be bidding aggressively for these because it does not make sense at these prices. The numbers don't match it.
Too many thoughts. And this in an industry where old people like us keep feeling music has gone to shit these days. Music used to be so great in our era, which just happened to be the exact time that we were and are emotionally most vulnerable. But anyhow, that is, I'm sure, completely irrelevant. But also these companies can do this because they're making cash from the music from our era. So from the yeah
Isn't
leftover
there like
royalties.
some 2000-year-old graffiti of young people nowadays just don't get it? I think there is.
Those people didn't get it. The generations before me were also wrong. Okay.
It's like when you're on the road, no? Everybody who's driving slower than you is a moron, and everybody driving faster than you is a maniac.
Yeah, exactly. But it is true, all previous generations were wrong and all future generations are wrong. It is true. It is an objective fact. I can back that up by writing it on paper. No, this has actually been a great summary. I like any thoughts on like residuals, where they're going, because so much of the streaming era, so much of the writer strikes. See, again, a lot of my internet consumption is from the West, right?
Mhm.
Partly because there's also more information, more media there that is actually reporting on ground level issues, and partly just because we've grown up on those movies and music equally, right? So, for example, residual issues, that if there's a hit TV show like Friends, right, that is broadcasting, the actors, the writers, even the crew are making a certain amount of money from every time that show is aired again on television. The streaming platforms have killed that. It is just a one time payment to buy the show. So, therefore, once that show is bought off and aired, whether it plays like a billion times or 10 billion times, the artists involved are not making any more money from that. So, any thoughts on how that played out in India? Secondly, yes, coming back to the original point that the labels seem to be cashing in. The artists seem to be struggling because even on Spotify, like a couple of things I found was, again, Spotify is also great at selective information, right? So,
Even though they're listed.
yeah, like royalties in India. Yes, I saw this press release. Indian artists Spotify royalties double for those earning over rupees 50 lakh since 2022. And I'm hunting for figures. Right,
Mhm.
increase of 13% since 2023. Number of Indian artists generating over 50 lakhs in royalties has doubled. Indian artists generating over 1 crore in royalties have tripled. Those generating over 5 crore in royalties have doubled. Two-thirds of the royalties generated in India in 2024 came from Indian artists. There are no numbers anywhere. Over 90% of the tracks were by local artists. There are no numbers anywhere. This could just be 6 artists versus 3. Meanwhile, again, information is hard to find, but average payout seems to be like 0.067 rupees per stream.
Is it rupees or paise?
Yeah, actually, this should be. I think it's paise, but it's very vague information. But I saw this sum up on a couple of places that if you have like 3 to 4 lakhs streams a month, you'll be making about 2 to 3,000 rupees as an artist. So labels seem to be making bank. Overall revenues are rising. These companies are doing very well. Artists are struggling. Why is that? Is it again a like is it a consolidation thing in terms of both the companies in play and even the songs at play? Why do you think that's happening? Because if the industry is booming, there should be a lot of competition, right? For art, for artists.
No. Supply demand. That's all it is.
How has that supply demand changed over the years? So there is consolidation at the demand on the company side, right? Otherwise, things should be the same. As the industry is growing, if supply demand relation is the same, then as the industry earns more, the artists should also be earning more. But artists are struggling. Somewhere the streaming era seems to have broken something for the artists.
No. Disagree. The music industry in the West and in India, the founding principle is exploitation. Okay, in both places. Look at the early history of record labels, which are the same fuckers who evolved into the Sony and the Universal today and the Warner Music Group. These are the big three of music labels in the world today. They've Their entire business model was on how much can we extract from this artist, because they're the funnel of when an artist is actually brought into the landscape is when they're really really young, you know 15, 16, 17, around then. And they were made to sign these captive contracts, which is what happened with Taylor Swift when she was discovered. She came from a pretty well-to-do family, and she had access to great lawyers. But that's just how the music industry was. So she signed over the rights to her first few albums to her agent, and he went on and later sold them to somebody that Taylor had beefed with for the longest time, who happened to be Justin Bieber's manager, a guy named Scooter Braun. And Taylor said, "No, I detest this guy. He cannot own the rights to my music." And do you know the story?
Yeah, that she which I heard first for Def Leppard, where they also re-recorded a lot of their earlier albums
Yeah,
just to regain the rights to the masters.
because the way
Or rather,
the
they had lost the rights to the masters, so they
yeah,
re-recorded the masters.
so there are, when a song is created, there are two rights that are generated. There's the master right, which is the right to the actual recording, and the other is owned by the songwriter. And in this case, Taylor was the songwriter, right? So she could use the sheet music in sense, and re-record in her own voice, because the record labels did not own her voice, and she owned the copyright to the songs themselves, the actual notes and the words, because she was a songwriter. And so she went back, and guys, if you haven't, or if this is the first you're hearing of this, go and check out Acquired's episode. I think that's the only episode they've done on a person without actually interviewing that person. There's an Acquired Taylor Swift episode, and the boys got cheeky. It's called Taylor Swift Acquired's version, because when Taylor Swift re-released her songs, which she had recorded, each of those songs has hyphen version, Taylor's version on it. So they call it Acquired version. So yeah, that was awesome. So Taylor Swift went out and said, "Look, here's what's happened to the audience, to anybody looking to license a song for ads, to radio stations." She said, "You can play those songs, you can listen to them, listen to the one which is named Taylor's version, because then those fuckers don't get any royalties off of it." And this was so cool. It was the ultimate fuck you. She did not invent this, but the fact that at the peak of her, and the Acquired guys actually make this point, at the peak of her career, she took out time to re-record 4 albums, is a big deal. It's a big sacrifice for somebody who was touring for most of that time. She said, "Yeah, fuck it. I'm touring. I'll record while touring. No problem. We have to do this. I have to reclaim what's mine, or at least make sure it doesn't end up in that asshole's hands." That asshole, by the way, made bank, sold the rights to private equity fund, and not private equity. I think it was a family office. I think it was a Disney family office, if I remember correctly. Shamrock. He sold the rights to them, and they actually came back to Taylor and said, "Look, that guy's out of the equation now. It's just us, and we haven't harmed you in any way. So can we please work like the industry works?" And she just asked, "Does any of this revenue go back to Scooter?" And they said, "Yeah, he has a royalty agreement with us in perpetuity." She said, "No, then fuck you. I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm
then
not
that is
gonna
very cool. Yeah, agreed. That is
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah. So, one last thing, I'll share the link with you. There was an interview of the CEO of Warner Music Group, I think. I think it was Warner. Might have been one of the other two. I don't remember. Where uh, he was talking about how, again, there's an AI angle to this, right? So here's where we are, and now you have the near term possibility. It's already there. There are already many thousands of tracks on Spotify which are entirely AI generated, and they're making revenues. So the question is now, what happens? And for now, the stopgap measure is that AI generated content gets a smaller weightage in the payout algorithm on streaming labels at the moment. But I don't know how they're going to draw the line. Like, if an artist is also using AI to create content, like if I'm singing a duet and the male voice is entirely me, a real person, and the female voice is AI, how are you going to categorize it? I don't know. I don't know where this leads, but that's where they are. Even these guys are not sure of how AI is going to disrupt their industry in terms of new content that comes up. Especially things like sleep music and stuff like, which is a thing, by the way. People
Of course it is. There were
online.
see, so okay. My TV has played, like my YouTube account has played God knows how many hours of cat TV. Right. There are people who've been slop shopping like YouTube videos for kids for ages, and like there's a whole Indian sub industry
Yeah,
or
yeah.
mega industry on that even before AI came in. Uh, I won't start off on the AI thing because you know me and AI. So lots of thoughts there, but no, I'll just say this is an easily solvable problem if they choose to want to solve it. It is very easy for them to figure what these apps are and to ask those apps to add signatures so that they can recognize that this is AI music. It's
Mhm.
just a problem that right now everyone seems to be benefiting from in terms of valuation. So they're like very happy to not point out that AI is a problem.
Yeah. It was Warner, I think. And two takeaways that I had from that interview. It's a great interview, by the way. I'll send you the link. You should watch it and put it in the show notes. One was after feuding with two big AI companies, not the LLMs themselves, one of the rappers. Now, this is with WRAPP, not rappers. But they said we finally reached a settlement and we're going to allow them to use our catalog as training data. So this is just another revenue stream for us, which
That's the most boring end to a rap battle ever. Sorry.
which I was surprised to hear because another listed company that I follow in a completely different space, but which technically is also publishing, is also generating revenues this way. Do you remember, or since you never took science, have you heard of S. Chand and Co, the
Yeah,
text guys? Yeah, they generate about 20 crores a year
as training
from
data from AI.
the market cap of the company is 500 crores. They are
Like
20 crores.
who bought? This is very interesting. Who? Like I know the international exam. Like Vox Media made $70 million, I think, from selling all their whatever to the AI companies.
Yeah. No, this is
Uh,
annual revenue. It's growing
yeah.
and
Like who bought?
they have not disclosed that. Super cool. Again, not an investing recommendation. If you look at the S-Chan stock price, you'll know why. But a company that I'm following, and it is so unexpected. Like this is a boring textbook printing, a publishing company, And again, same thing. They have IP and they get royalties, and that was the mental model that I was applying. I did not expect this confluence of these guys are also licensing to AI models for training data to LLMs, and so are these guys. So music and textbooks, AI devours everything.
AI devours everything. Yeah.
That was one fun takeaway which I did not expect, which made me sit up. Second was I had seen the other half of this. Uh, Tips owns its own catalog, right? But it did not go out and negotiate with YouTube, not YouTube, with Meta and TikTok by itself. Tips tied up with Warner Music Group, and said, "Here, take our catalog, go negotiate on our behalf." Because, and that was the point I was driving at. The entire music industry is a series of meetings to decide who is the bigger bully,
Hmm.
and so it
Yeah.
makes sense to ally with one of the, like, you cannot sit this out as an independent. You have to pick a side. And ideally, the more IP accumulates on one side, the better bargaining power they have. Warner has not done any other value addition to the catalog. They have not spruced it up. They have not unlocked some new revenue stream. They just negotiated on Tips's behalf. Imagine doing that in any other industry. Like I own this piece of land, and I'm going to give you a percentage to go out and find me a tenant for this land, and whatever rent I get in perpetuity, I'll give you a part of that. It's equivalent of that. Not a broker for selling the land. That I would understand. It isn't that. This is rent. And you're happy to share your rent in perpetuity with somebody just for the privilege of letting them negotiate on your behalf. How fucking skewed is this industry?
Good that the labels, Indian labels, are doing well. It
Yeah,
hasn't, in my humble view, led to better music, but yeah.
their revenues have kind of tapered off. Maybe you'll have a Maddock movement in music labels as well. Or maybe we'll just have AI slump all the way down. going forward. Who knows?
Who knows?
Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. But thank you. Fantastic. I think I learned a lot today. And
I just hope I don't wake up in the middle of the night with, fuck, I forgot to talk about that. I tried, but there's just too much going on here.
Nitesh, I think that is a podcaster's life. Like, wake up and my audience needs to know, like in a cold sweat. And this is a unique one for us. We are continuing today with a guest. We have Varun Bhakay with us, who is a film expert. He's been writing about film for 10 years. He was the penultimate employee at Film Companion. Draw your own conclusions. And he's a war expert. How many wars have you started this year, Varun?
None yet.
Ah.
But we're still early in the year.
Yeah, it's
Not
still
an
early.
expert. I should just clarify. I'm not an expert on either cinema or on war. I am yet to get my master's degree.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
podcast. We have to say these things.
but no, I should just clarify. But otherwise, they actually see it and they'll be like, "You're an expert. You're the same level of qualification as us."
Okay.
And
A
better
war
critics will
thinker
see
and a
this.
film thinker.
Yes, thinker, writer on those subjects. Yes, both.
Thinker, writer, tailor, spy. No, sorry. Uh,
That's a good one.
no, it's not. I beg to
If
differ.
you
It
put
is
it
not.
between Takshashila and between Bookworm, you can plant that flag. So it's equidistant from art and security.
That's like saying, ki, like last week I was having a discussion, ki, part of me wants to move to South Delhi and part of me wants to move to Bangalore. So maybe I should just average it out and move to Nagpur.
Oh god.
Something like that. Don't
That,
have oranges.
that's, I mean, if you're fond of oranges, I suppose
I was
there's
just
a
going to
point.
say that I can make an orange joke and it's not the one you think. But
Multiple kinds of oranges.
I mean, I don't know the state of free speech in the country right now because I've not been back for about 14 months. So
Oh, then you
I'm
can do whatever you
exercising
want.
my
You can say
rights.
whatever you want. So today being the first time we're having a guest on board and to continue our discussion, which we were having, well, we could say 3 days ago, but you're just immediately following the edit. So, which we were having 5 minutes ago on the edit, which is about Excel Entertainment, getting an investment from Universal, and yeah, the general state of affairs in the film and the music industry. So, Nitesh, continue.
yeah, the Excel deal was one that we spoke about. Saregama invested in Sanjay Leela Bhansali's production house. That was two. Although we didn't mention it a little while back, the Poonawalla family also picked up a stake in Dharma. Although that was a different deal with a different rationale, and we didn't. That's the reason I didn't bring it up when we were discussing it. There's a lot of churn happening in the music side of things, and
Right.
because these guys are the two listed companies in this space, Saregama and Tips, are sitting on large cash reserves as well as a kind of regular payment coming in without much expenditure from there, and now on the back catalog the royalties
Yes.
that they get, so they're leveraging that money to build strategic stakes in production houses so that they no longer bid for the music rights, which is their area of expertise.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the broader theme that we discussed. But again, so just wanted to get your broad take on where we stand, and if there's anything we missed or a blind spot that we don't realize we have. That
Um.
was the broad discussion.
So what's surprising to me, especially about the Excel Universal tie-up, is
Mhm.
that these companies were exiting the market at one point. The American firms. So Sony memorably came into the Indian market with Savaria,
Yeah.
and it was a massive disaster. Sanjay Leela Bhansali didn't show them the film till like 2 weeks before it was supposed to premiere. Bosses from India were recalled to LA and asked to give an explanation for their conduct because they'd spent something like 35 crores on a film with two. And this is a time when you don't spend that kind of money on films. Today it's
Right.
very like people just go out and say 350, 400, 500 crores. But back pre-Ghajni, pre-Three Idiots, before that kind of money was coming in, certainly you weren't spending that kind of money already. And Warner memorably did Chandni Chowk to China with Nikhil
Yeah.
Advani. And so you had a bunch of these. And I remember there was a time when Walt Disney wanted to take a stake in Yash Raj Films. and the Chopras are of course very fiercely protective of they're very much an old fashioned Hollywood studio. They control everything from distribution to I mean they're the one distribution to music to VFX. Everything gets done on
In,
that facility in that facility in Bombay. In fact, they're probably the one major Indian production house that also do their own distribution abroad. So they have an office, I think, in the UK. They have an office in the States, and they do it themselves. They don't contract it to another company, which is the normal common practice. So suddenly to see this happen again when these companies were leaving the India market, uh, despite Disney making a sizable amount of money on Dangal, they left um, in 2017, I think, when Jagga Jasoos fell on its backside pretty badly, and they'd again pushed up a lot of money on that movie. So it's strange, and it's almost a walk back on that idea of, okay, we don't want to make films over here anymore, because the operating culture of the film industry is very different. In Hollywood, you just have a very different dynamic where directors actually have contracts with companies, and over here, production houses tend to have more of uh, that kind of tie up. The one hope I have as somebody who enjoys watching cinema is that the stake Universal have taken in Excel Entertainment means Farhan Akhtar stops acting in movies and has to go back to making them instead. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how filmmakers at least adapt to these changes, because will they be more answerable to these entities that come in, or will they still sort of go around making those films that are just happening? And on the flip side, there's the fact that I think Disney and Jio have just done a tie up as well.
yeah.
um, and they've I'm very surprised to see that the competition commission has not stepped in yet and sort of said that this is almost monopolistic practice, because you're two massive companies coming together, or for that matter PVR and Inox, which impacts the distribution and exhibition of cinemas immensely. They have, I think, about three odd thousand screens out of 10,000 in India. That's a massive amount of the market that just one entity controls. So it's difficult, I think, still to get a sense, just as a viewer, as somebody who likes cinema, of where this is going to go. Because the thing is, they put out these very corporate statements, which is a lot of speak, but there's no, this is the kind of slate we're going to develop from here on out. This is the kind of thinking we want to sort of embody. I have no idea whether I've made any sense, but
Like, what are the
I'm
possible scenarios? Like, so I would say one thing, I guess it's a safe enough statement, is that we want diversity of cinema,
yes,
right? We want, yeah, there's the blockbusters, of course, and there are also the smaller indie films, and there's the smaller, low budget production house films also, right? Even the
yeah,
big guys should be encouraging low budget films. I guess that's a non-controversial enough statement. Like the US, as I see it, as an untrained whatever film looking looking from afar, right? Uh, the corporatization and like the last 20 years has just been super consolidation into superhero films.
yeah.
The indie era that we were sort of expecting through OTT and whatnot has, I don't see much of it, or maybe it's just my algos. Uh, but yeah, what are the possible scenarios that you think this could head in? If I had to ask you three scenarios that could turn up.
I mean, one is very evidently that everybody just wants to make the next Dhurandhar, which is kind of the problem in Hindi cinema, which is one thing becomes successful and they all jump onto. Now, I have problems with Dhurandhar. I've gotten trolled also a little bit for it, so that's all good. Um, sure, it's one kind of film. I believe that Aditya has the right to tell whatever story he wants to tell. It's not the only kind of film that deserves to be made. Unfortunately, the tendency is everything needs to be a big screen experience. The thing is, most things look good on a big screen. There's
Hmm.
no, I don't think there's been something quite as cinematic as Abhishek Chaube's Son Chidiya uh, that I've watched on a big screen in Hindi cinema, and it's sparse on VFX. It's really just the Badlands of Chambal.
Yeah.
But the thing is that everybody is now making these big action movies, which are not genuine action films either. So claiming to promise a kind of quality and you're failing to deliver on that. Durandar, in that sense, is very much an exception because it's going and putting the camera in a place where it's trying to actually shoot action. Otherwise, if you look at a Pathan or I don't watch any Salman Khan cinema, so but you can tell that those aren't actual action set pieces. They're just shooting at on a floor in Yashad Studios. So that's one way that cinema goes. The progressive or the wishful thinking part of it is that there is now, because of money coming in from other sources and these people sort of sitting on their heads with a danda, there will be like a forced diversification. And again, you had a studio like Yashraj doing a lot of that. They were doing a lot of the small town stuff. They were doing the Sui Dhagas and the Band Baja. I mean, Band Baja Barat is set in Delhi, but it's not set in Lutyens Delhi, or it's not set in South Delhi. It's set in a more desi atmosphere, to put it in one way. So you had that diverse filmmaking happening even at that end, but you just need people, more diverse people, as opposed to diverse storytelling, because a city person going and shooting in a village will have a very exotic view of a village. A person who's seen that life, at least seen small town India, the gulf is so tremendous between Bombay and Pune even. And nobody, most people would not like Pune to be called a tier B city, but for all practical purposes, where a PVR icon is selling a ticket for 250 rupees, it is a tier B city because their pricing is that way. And the third thing is that the theaters just accept that this is the only kind of film that gets made, and eventually we see a situation that's already playing out in the West where theaters start to shut down. India needs theaters more because it's a common form of entertainment. So which is why I don't want to sort of push down on like populist cinema in any way. It's also a form of livelihood for a lot of people. To sort of say that PVR should take over the country in the way it has sort of taken over is then to say that it's fine that these people lose their, and I mean that's probably the socialist or the social welfare part of my understanding of the world, which says that people should have their livelihood. Sure, these theaters don't deliver on quality in most ways. I've seen rats inside theaters in even in Hyderabad, but you need those places to survive. A PVR, if it goes and does opens a multiplex, I don't know, in the back of Beyond, they've you can't expect the people of Gangtok to pay as much as the people of Bangalore are willing to pay for a movie ticket. You know,
And also, it's easier for them to consolidate what they're showing, right? It's
yes,
easier
and
for PVR than to just say, let's just play this all over the country rather than a local cinema
local
figuring
cinema,
like this
absolutely.
movie will be popular here.
I mean, for instance, there was a Manipuri film called Boong, which recently came out, and it had terrible distribution from what I understand. It was produced by Excel Entertainment. So a film like that, a film like Sabar Bonda, which is making the waves as well, these movies deserve to be out in theaters. There's no and at least Marathi, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and Malayalam, of course, to some extent Punjabi. These are sort of local cinema industries which have a pipeline, which have a way. I mean, in Maharashtra, there's that terribly dictatorial thing of you have to show X percentage of Marathi films, which is, I mean, bad for business practice in general. But you're like, okay, fine, I guess, it's just going to be that way. And a Hindi film, for instance, will never take up the task of getting dubbed in Marathi because there's always a political outfit that will oppose it,
Right.
because Hindi and Marathi are also fairly close in terms of the language, and the text is, of course, both are written in Devanagari. But cinema from, say, Bengal, which has repeatedly sort of gotten pushed down almost. It used to be the high point of Indian cinema at one point. And I'm not talking just Ray. I'm talking Ghatak. I'm talking Bimal Roy. I'm talking Mrinal Sen. A lot of these people, all of these people are from Bengal, um, and the industry is sort of getting sandwiched between Hindi and English again. And then the smaller states have absolutely no uh, sort of outlet for expression, and the streamers are not going there. I've not heard of a major Assamese production by a streaming service. I've not, and Assam has a fledgling film industry. They had I forget the name, I forget the title of the film, but they had like some martial arts movies that they were doing, which were apparently really funny, and people were going in droves to watch these movies. So again, like you said, when a PVR comes in, they'll be like, yeah, okay, so everybody in India is going to watch Dhurandhar. Somewhere, I think there needs to be an understanding that films need better distribution more than anything else. I again, Ajay Bijli, who heads PVR, is very defensive of their pricing structure, and he's justified in saying that. But they also put some stuff out only in selective sort of. PVR also has brands of its own, right? So they have a PVR director's cut, they'll have a gold, they'll have, and they come up with these strange names like, I don't know if either of you are familiar with Pune, but pretty, particularly affluent neighborhoods called Koregaon Park.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, PVR decided that their director's cut outlet there deserves to be called PVR Director's Cut Copa. And so it's all this sort of pretentiousness that is infiltrating what is in India at least, and screen penetration remains poor despite 10,000 odd screens. There's very little going around, so that when two big movies come out on the same weekend, it's doomsday. You uh, either both sink or one sinks. It's very rare that both will succeed.
Right.
That's sort of
Because the
my
channel can only support that much
I,
capacity,
I
right?
mean, it depends. Your again, the producers somehow want the widest releases always, but every film doesn't cater to a wide release format. So if you're
Right.
putting out a Jawan, you can confidently say, okay, I want 6,000 screens. But
Hmm.
if Shahrukh was doing a Swades right now, would you send Swades to 6,000 screens? No. But even if you send it to 2,000 screens, that needs to be programmed better. I think the smaller filmmakers are sort of against the whole policy of, they get the 8:30 a.m. shows, then they'll get the 11:45 p.m. show. So they're getting like, and they'll get the weekdays as opposed to, anything on the weekends. So
Right.
they're effectively being strong armed out of the exhibition pipeline, and they're not given, I mean, the streamers are not going to engage with indie filmmakers either, because indie filmmakers tend to be slightly more political anyway. And at least in a situation like in India, where after all the ruckus that has been kicked up over sacred games, over Patal Lok, over Tandav, uh,
Hmm.
people just are not, I think, going to Maximum City. Kashyap, Anurag Kashyap had written for Netflix, and that got scrapped.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, I kind of blame Kashyap for that, because have you read Maximum City? Suketu Mehta is taking a stab at, you know, puncturing every reputation he can puncture, and he's naming people. I think there's some bit in it where he's cussing out Vidhu Vinod Chopra,
Yeah.
and Chopra was apparently pretty annoyed because him and Mehta had written a film together, Mission Kashmir. So it's like being et tu Brutus kind of situation for him. So, but then again, if you're saying that nobody wants a court case at the end of the day. Aparna Purohit, who was heading Amazon in India, she had to go and appear in court. Like, there's no case against the platform. There's always cases against like the people who are heading it. So nobody
Right.
wants to get into that either. So it feels like a very muddled uh, situation to be in, and there's no clarity on a lot of things. Just right now, I think Jananayagan and Parasakti, two major films in Tamil Nadu, have had a big thing with the censors. Of course, Parasakti is about Hindi imposition, so it's naturally not going to fare well at a time when
Mhm.
Hindi imposition is actively happening. And I think Jananayagan and Vijay is a controversial figure in his own right.
Right.
Uh, and he's a politician, so you're going to have that. It doesn't seem like there's a clear cut approach to any of this anymore. At a point of time when you had certain bodies in place and certain norms and stuff, you were like, okay, we understand what's happening. But doesn't feel like that's the case anymore. We're not going to see another Vijay Anand type to head the censor board, certainly.
Right. Oh, so much to unpack there. First of all, if you're going to talk about antitrust in front of Vineet, it's like waving steak in front of Spike in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. He is going to start salivating.
I was like,
So,
I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to
Oh, you should, but I mean, it's
no,
it's
we do this every
go
week.
there till 10 p.m.
It's a recurring theme here. Just a whole bunch of things. We actually discussed financing in the Hindi film industry before it was actually recognized as an industry, and where
yeah,
the door opened for the underworld to step in, and how things got totally convoluted there. Then the reason the foreign studios came in
yeah,
and the reason they failed. Again, the difference between there and here is, to my understanding, the Hollywood studios then were financing individual projects, right? They hadn't invested in any of these production houses.
no,
This is a different animal.
yeah,
And
completely.
yeah, even though it is still a minority stake, these guys wield enormous power, right? So it should turn out different this time. In fact, I might be weaving a very convenient narrative here, but I felt that a lot of the lovely movies that came out in the mid to late 2000s were because of Hollywood money coming in and trying to replicate the things that were working back home.
Yeah,
Yeah. Otherwise, those projects, these studios by themselves, or Yashraj, would not have greenlit these projects if it wasn't riskless for them, or virtually riskless for them. Right?
right.
Somebody else was bankrolling it.
I
Do
mean,
you think?
Yashraj sort of should stay out of the conversation since they've never even allowed a Hollywood studio to have a conversation with them about something as basic as distribution. They'll not let anybody else touch their stuff. So, um, but I do get what you're saying. Like there's a whole stream of these films, and we
Yeah.
can debate about the quality of Savaria till Kingdom Come, or about the quality of Chandni Chowk to China. But when Chandni Chowk to China was
They were
happening,
fantastic.
apparently,
No, 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 no. There is no debate here. They were amazing, both of them.
I think Nikhil Advani was offered the opportunity to direct Shantaram before Chandni Chowk flopped.
Yeah.
Fox put up money for My Name Is Khan to be made in America, of course. So it's an Indo-American film technically because it's made with American money and not merely through the Fox India uh, studio. And I have a soft corner for even Bombay Velvet, which I know a lot of people hate. But I mean that is the Hollywood model, right? Where the studio gives you a set amount of money and the
Right.
production company takes that money and goes and makes the film. I see the Saregama Bhansali tie up slightly differently in that I think they're going there purely because of Bhansali's music.
Music. Yeah.
Bhansali's music
They
always
said as
sells.
much.
His
Yeah.
his
They said
films
as
can
much.
be hit or miss, but his
Yeah.
music always manages to become
Works. Yeah.
popular. They're able to make a king's ransom on this kind of stuff because on YouTube they'll put out 15 different versions of the same song. So one with lyrics, one with just audio, one with video and lyrics, one with audio and lyrics, and then they go and do all these remasters and 8K and 16K and 28K and whatever resolutions that don't exist suddenly happen to be there on YouTube. Dimensions that don't exist in physical reality happen to be there on YouTube. So
All
they're
these
able to
songs
milk.
have views in the millions.
Yeah,
All of them.
all of it.
Each
Um,
upload has views in the millions.
and
Uh,
and and most of India has not woken up to Brave as a browser, so
right.
they're all still they're all still playing ads on their YouTube videos.
Or YouTube Premium on the other end,
Are people
which
paying for YouTube Premium?
we both are.
Really?
Yes.
I wouldn't pay for YouTube Premium. But
I've
no, I
got
sorry, I interrupted you when you were talking about the quality of cinema having improved when these companies came in.
the variety at least.
Yeah,
The
I
kind of
mean
projects
even the
that,
quality. I mean, let's be fair to them in that sense, I guess.
yeah. So hopefully we see a resurgence of that. Films have a long lead time, so we might not see the actual effects play out for another 2 or 3 years, maybe. But the next slate of the next roster of films that come out should demonstrate which way the balance of power is.
On the thing of Maddock, because you were talking about it, is that
Right.
one hopes that there'll be more production houses like this that come up.
Hmm.
With Hollywood, what happened was after the studio system ended, a lot of these companies became parts of a part of
Yeah.
larger entities.
Yeah.
The real sort of corporatization of Hollywood, as it were.
Right.
And one doesn't want to really see that happen. Like, I don't want, much as I have no fondness for Dharma Productions, I don't encourage her to start an airline also tomorrow and then become a construction magnate. And then films are just part of his deal. So, that'd be very. Already, the Poonawala's investing in Dharma is weird because pharma is your business. What are you doing here? it's almost
And
it's almost a comedy.
we don't even have the self awareness of having a Jack Donaghy type character 10 years from now
Right. I mean,
to
it's
make
it's
fun of this very thing.
yeah, that's true. And they're not hiring the sort of everybody's sort of hiring their own friends and children and stuff like that. So there's very little original thought coming into anything that gets made eventually.
I would sit in a plane flown by Kiara Advani. I don't know about you.
I would I don't want to see more of that kind of cinema for sure. I want them to go and shoot a location for a location, not like okay, send a second unit there and get them to shoot it, and we'll do all the because something like War 2 bombing meant that people could visibly see that there was something wrong with this film. Uh, and it's unfair to blame like the VFX teams for this kind of stuff, right? Because your hurried production deadlines are what cause these problems, and not necessarily the work or lack thereof by that team.
Right.
That's like a Blofeld cameo almost now that Vineet's doing. It's I mean that's the kind of filmmaking you want to see eventually, like nuts and bolts and going and making the film eventually, as opposed to saying okay, we'll shoot everything. Dhurandhar also at the end it just collapses because you're like, hey, that's Film City. I can tell. So
Right.
suddenly you go from this immersion of okay, this is a gangland town
Yeah.
inside Karachi to okay, Film City. Hi, where is there a leopard around here somewhere?
I genuinely enjoyed the first half of the film.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
It was fun. It was fun. Not my
I
kind of
did
movie,
too.
but I enjoyed it.
The thing is that with government controls coming in, like Punjab 95 has been stuck for a while, and this is despite Ronnie Screwvala having actually gone and sort of sucked up to the government in the best way possible by making a movie like Tejas. Um, so you're kind of like, okay, is original thought even going to happen in a country like where we can't take a joke about something very very basic? Like if you watch any of like the David Dhawan movies from the 90s where they're cracking a joke about a brand, or there's of course that famous clip of Akshay Khanna going around which is agar main rupa ki banyan पहनूंगा to rupa kya पहनेगी केले के पत्ते. You couldn't get that past the censors today because they'd be like, okay, go to the guys who make rupa vests and get an NOC from
NOC
them
from
that you can say this.
Yeah.
Rocky or Rani had a reference to Old Monk, and they were like, okay, have you gone to the guys that make Old Monk
Really?
and gotten an NOC from them?
Whoa.
You can't say something as basic as a line of dialogue without running into some kind of trouble. Like, where is the space for filmmaking then?
Yeah, criticize Pakistan all you want and you'll get every
I mean,
permission.
the thing is that even with that, 21, for instance, changes the name of the original Pakistani officer. I don't think that's a censor diktat, but
Hmm.
I could see that being the censor diktat. That hey, have you gone and gotten an NOC from this Pakistani person's family or this Bangladeshi person's family or whatever? And it's just a slippery slope. The moment and government has always been too involved in too many things in India. I mean, just leave cinema alone. Leave the censor board to just say, okay, 18 uncut, 15 uncut. No cuts should be offered to a film.
That's not gonna happen in India,
I
man.
mean, exactly. Yeah, right. I mean, and cuts happen everywhere. Like if you cut a film, it can go from NC-17 to R in America.
Yeah.
It can go from 15 to 12A in the UK. But
And these are financial decisions as much as they are creative decisions, right? I mean, it's a trade-off, but somewhere
yeah,
it's a line that most people have to walk.
I think also because brands are so strangely humorless in India for some reason. Like maybe in the 60s and the 70s, the world was different in that people had a sense of humor about the work they did. Then again, the prime minister was a big fan of his own caricatures at the time. The
So it
50s and the
was
60s, that
yeah,
is.
it was a different era. Again, that reminded me. Do you think product placements have gotten better because that's a solid source of revenue
Of revenue,
for
yes.
movies? Have they gotten better? I mean, I know we'll hopefully not go back to Yade levels of bad,
Oh,
but
that was great. There's
Netaji,
also
आप
some
किसके साथ
move.
Coca-Cola पी रहे हो?
There's also some movie in which Jackie Shroff's wife is dying and she gives him the house keys, and that has a Coca-Cola uh, symbol on it,
Oh, God.
or something like that.
But
I mean,
I'm
Nitesh
completely
going हम एयर इंडिया क्यों फ्लाई कर रहे हैं to experience the air of India.
I
Very
want somebody to do the reverse product placement of Indigo. Why is this flight late? It's an Indigo flight.
you
I mean,
can't have
मतलब लेट क्यों है?
increases in corporate
yeah.
brand integrations.
Pathan had this scene of Shah Rukh eating yogurt, and he literally says, "I love this sugar-free yogurt." And you're like, dude, that's such a terrible bit of brand integration. Like, and apparently the yogurt he was eating is something Deepika Padukone is either a brand ambassador for or an investor
Okay, then
in.
is an investor in.
I think epigamia is the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
Although I have no memory of this scene, I must have repressed it.
it's in the Russia bits of the film.
Right.
So, and then brands are so protective, right? Apple, for instance, does not love its products to be used by villains. So, like when
And
they
then you
write
have
the
to
final
show.
part of Dhurandhar, like Arjun Rampal cannot be working on a Macintosh. Um, so it's in some ways it's become less visible also, because fewer people seem to be doing it at some. Earlier you used to have a lot of brand integration. Like Dawn, I remember, had Motorola. It had because Shah Rukh is using the Razor, which was
Yeah.
the most fascinating piece of technology 7-year-old me had ever seen.
I was so impressed by Val Kilmer in The Saint using a Nokia communicator, the pencil
Oh,
box.
I remember when Dhoom 3 came out, the Beamer bike that Amir rides in it was a big thing. Not a lot of people knew about BMW making bikes.
Mhm.
But after a point, the film was so stupid that you forgot about the bike. Right? You
Right.
didn't care enough anymore. You were like, okay, this is just ridiculous. So, at what point does filmmaking become subordinated to brand integration? Is the uh, point, I guess. Like Salman's movies are a great bit of brand integration because they're all about Salman, and he's always wearing that damn bracelet of his. It's going to be very funny if he's wearing it even as he plays an army officer posted in Galwan.
Of course he will.
That's the thing that will save him, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Will that ruin the immersion for you?
I'm not going to watch it. It's an Apurva Lakya film. But
One more thing I
yeah,
wanted to add. Sorry if I'm interrupting.
no.
I briefly mentioned this in the WhatsApp group that we are on. There's this small listed company. Again, not an investing recommendation. Please do your own due diligence, etc., etc. It's on the SME
Okay,
boards. You should be even more careful. That basically has prepackaged. Uh, if you have a space, we're going to come in and set up a miniplex or a microplex. Microplex. The company is called Complex, and what they do is they work on a franchise model. They say we will negotiate the distribution, we will help you with the FMB, the equipment you need to source. We have a ticketing platform, so you can, we will interface with the book my shows of the world, and we have our own portal, we have our own app. You just provide the space, and classic franchise owned, franchisee operated model of much smaller screens, and they
right.
have wonderful presence in, like, not even tier 2, 3, 4 and beyond,
Wow,
and
okay.
they seem to be doing all right so far from what I could glean. Like, they do have a good number of screens, and I don't see franchisees putting up money beyond a point, like the unless they either have, they see viability in the project report, or they know somebody who's done this in another city and it is doing at least all right, if not well. So that's great, no?
I
If
mean,
that can pick up.
it would be lovely, but since I have always been an art student and a humanities student my entire life. I gave up like maths. I never even thought about commerce when the time came. So my business sense is completely, I have none. I only understand how not to spend money on frivolous things, which I try to do as much as possible. But the thing is that not enough is being done to sort of, help up the struggling single screens or the two screens that exist. they need to exist as viable businesses in themselves, essentially, because or you provide them a small loan that helps them at least tidy up their business. They can put in decent seats, if not comfortable seats. They can they should be of course you've got to have all that stuff, right? Fire compliant and safety compliant and
Right.
everything. A PVR is not going to go to a smaller city
Exactly.
beyond a point. Like, I think they have outlets in Indore, but do I see them going into a Mhau or a Dhana or I don't know, Sagar? Unlikely.
And like,
Uh,
yeah,
Maybe they'll go to an Ujjain.
they have a bunch of locations there, if memory serves. I
Oh,
used
in
to
in
follow
Ujjain.
the
Okay.
I used to
Uh,
follow the company once upon a time. But back to your single screen point, I think at least in the metros, the single screen theaters have been overwhelmed by three separate trends. One, the real estate that they're sitting on has just appreciated so wildly that
yeah.
it does not make sense. It's much easier for them to, cave and take that big paycheck, or like some people in Bangalore have done, put up an office building there or a tech park
Yeah.
and share revenues in perpetuity, way more than any theater could ever pay off. That's one. Second, succession is an issue. The next generation is just not interested
Yeah.
in operating a theater business. And third, they don't have any negotiating power
Right.
at all. So it you can see why single screen theaters are succumbing. It's surprising that the holdouts have held out for
Yeah.
as long as they have, at least in the
I
metros.
mean, and also, to be fair, the quality is quite bad in some of the metros, right? Sure, there'll be a Regal in Bombay, which is, I think, it's a single screen, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but it's in South Bombay. It's clearly designed to cater to upper middle class people at the very least. A middle class person with an interest in cinema might go there, but otherwise, like, people are effectively priced out of. And Bombay being as massive a city as it is, nobody is traveling from, I don't know, Kandivali or wherever to come and watch a movie in South Bombay.
Right,
It makes no sense. And again, my appreciation of singles, not just single screens, independently owned cinemas, is largely a product of the year or so I've spent in the West, where I can see them flourishing because they're like, okay, uh, you know you can become a year long member and you get discounted tickets. So you pay £15 at a cinema in London, and you get £2.5 off of every ticket thereafter for the next year.
right,
Or if you have the money at the moment, you pay them £100 and you become a lifetime member. It's not a it's not an insignificant amount of money, but £100 translates to something like 12,000 rupees. I
right.
think, if today's exchange is correct, if I remember the exchange rate right, or let's say 12,500, which
Uh,
is what, 10 multiplex tickets in a year in India. You're effectively paying that much with parking, uh, transport, fuel. We don't have any of those things being offered by even the PVR passport is a big scam, because they're like, okay, you can only come in on certain days, only
yeah,
certain kinds
weekday
of seats.
weekday afternoons, and you sit right
Yeah.
in front.
And they cap the number of movies you can watch. Over
Yeah.
here, I, for instance, am a member of the Odeon group of cinemas, their sort of loyalty program, if you want to call it that.
Mhm.
For £19, which translates to about 2,400 rupees, you can watch as many movies as you like. You can sit
Wow.
in a recliner, you can sit in a regular chair, depends on what your local theater offers.
Right.
There is only an uplift charge if you're going for an IMAX film, or if you're going for a Dolby enabled uh, screen, which makes it so much easier. There are people who are going to the movies every day.
Nice.
And there are people who, like me, will go thrice a month or four times a month, and it's still more financially viable than going and buying a ticket each time. So it's all also a matter of how convenient it gets.
I have one more personal anecdote, and I think we can wrap. Varun, anything else you want to get out
I
of your?
do I do want to ask you guys about the Geo, because on the business element of it,
Mhm.
the Geo Disney tie up and the PVR Inox thing, and why that doesn't appear to have created more of a ruckus within the business element of the industry.
Both mergers happened in special circumstances. PVR and Inox merged right at the peak of the pandemic,
Right.
and so it was portrayed, and in in fairness to Ajay Bijli, it was an existential thing for them, that we won't survive if we don't do this. That's how
Right.
it was told, and so extenuating circumstances. And Jio Hotstar, have you seen how Reliance swallowed up Big Bazaar?
Yeah.
So again, extenuating circumstances.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I'll say. Uh, Anyway, back to my anecdote.
Yes.
You were saying about theater in the middle of nowhere. This should have been about a good 10, 15 years back. At least, yeah, it was 15 years back. When did Happy New Year come out?
Uh, 12 years ago, 2020,
Yeah.
2014.
So 12 years ago, we were on a trip to Rajasthan, the touristy parts of it. I am from Rajasthan ethnically, so again, it wasn't a visit to the hometown. We were doing the actual tourist circuit. We attended the Pushkar Fair,
Okay.
and we were camped out in a hotel 10 kilometers outside Ajmer, middle of nowhere, right? There's just a fork in the road. One road goes to Pushkar and the other goes to Ajmer. And at that intersection, there was a hotel, four-star hotel, I think, or three-star, and a multiplex in the middle of nowhere, 10 kilometers from the nearest town. There was an Inox there. So we checked into the hotel and went down, and we said, "What is showing?" They said, "There's this Farah Khan movie called Happy New Year." I said, "Wonderful. We want to watch that." They said, "No, you come back at the show time and we'll tell you कि show होगा कि नहीं." Like, okay, why? He says, "No, if we sell 16 tickets, then there will be a screening. Otherwise, there will not be a screening because nobody comes here." This was 10 years back. So he said, "Okay, how much are the tickets?" And it was some $100 or something. He said, "Okay, we will buy 16 tickets." But if anybody else turns up, you tell them the show is not happening. They said, "Okay." So we got a private screening. We sneaked in food and a lot else. And as terrible as that movie is, it's one of my happiest movie watching experiences
Right.
because the movie progressively gets worse, but we were progressively in happier spirits, and so it was amazing. It was a great movie.
I was once roaming around CP with a couple of friends many, 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 many years ago. One fine Saturday afternoon, and we decided to go see what's playing at not Odeon, which was the other one, Plaza. Uh, and whatever's playing, we will watch it.
Right?
What was playing was Shaka Laka Boom Boom.
Oh Lord.
Wow. Amadeus.
Uh, Bobby Deol, Upen Patel or Sonu Sood. Upen Patel,
Upen Patel, Bobby
music by
Deol,
Dinesh.
Selena Jetli, and Kangana Ranaut.
Yes, you are a true film student.
Film written by Anurag Kashyap, by the way.
Maybe.
Yeah, as a
And
writing.
we got very smashed, and we went and saw that movie an hour and a half later, and it was so much fun. On that happy note, I think let us wrap up. On that note of Happy New Year and LOC and Shakalaka Boom Boom.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having
Perfect
me.
time to wrap.
Thanks
Thanks
so
for
much.
joining us. This was such a fun conversation.
Yes.
I hope it's usable.
Yeah. So many shots I was thinking of as we were like going. That's the new currency. 30 seconds, nothing longer.
Reels.
Sure. And thank you guys for tuning in to a special episode. First the regular part and then the guest part. See you next time.
Bye bye.